but what a thrill. Goodness and gracious, great balls of fire.
America tried to kill this music. They burned the records, banned the radio plays, and called it the work of the devil himself. Why? Because black artists and white teenagers were dancing together, and that terrified them more than any war. 14 songs brought an entire nation to its knees. 70 years later, the people who tried to stop it are forgotten, but these songs remain undefeated. These are the 14 hits that America feared, and the songs that made you who you are.
I was dancing with my darling.
Before the revolution came, there was a quieter America, an America of front porch swings and Sunday church services and neighbors who knew your name. Patti Page understood that world perfectly, and Tennessee Waltz became its anthem. Released in 1950, it sold millions of copies and dominated the charts for months. Her voice was crystalline, almost fragile, carrying a story of heartbreak that felt deeply personal to everyone who heard it. The lyrics told of a woman who brought her sweetheart to a dance and watched helplessly as he fell in love with another. Simple, devastating, universal. There was no rebellion in this song, no hint of the earthquake that was coming. This was the music your grandparents swayed to in church basements and VFW halls, holding each other close while the world outside prepared to change forever. And yet, Tennessee Waltz deserves its place in this story. It represents the last breath of an old America, the final moment before everything accelerated beyond control. Patti Page gave voice to a gentleness that rock and roll would soon challenge. But listen closely to her pain, to her loss, and you realize that heartbreak sounds the same in any genre. The waltz was ending. The revolution was tuning its guitars. Nat King Cole possessed a voice that could calm storms and break hearts simultaneously. When he recorded Unforgettable in 1951, he created something that would outlive him, outlive his era, and outlive everyone who first heard it. His diction was flawless. His tone was pure velvet. Every syllable dripped with sophistication and warmth. This was not rock and roll, but it was undeniably powerful. Here was a black man singing to white America during the height of segregation, and they could not resist him. Nat King Cole performed in venues where he was forbidden to sleep. He sang for audiences who adored him on stage but would have refused to sit next to him at a lunch counter. In 1956, he was brutally attacked by white supremacists during a concert in Birmingham, Alabama. He finished the show with blood on his clothes. That was the kind of man he was. Decades after his death, his daughter Natalie used technology to create a duet with her father's original recording. Their voices blended across time and death, proving that some things truly are unforgettable. Nat King Cole never screamed or pounded a piano. He did not need to. His elegance was its own form of rebellion. In a world that wanted to diminish him, he remained untouchable. His music still plays at weddings and funerals and quiet moments when people need to feel something beautiful.
I've got you under my skin.
Frank Sinatra did not need rock and roll to be the biggest star in America. By the mid-50s, he had already conquered radio, film, and the hearts of millions. But in 1956, he released an album called Songs for Swingin' Lovers that redefined what popular music could achieve. At the heart of that masterpiece sat I Have Got You Under My Skin, a Cole Porter standard transformed into something hypnotic and dangerous. Nelson Riddle's arrangement built the song like a fever dream. Layer upon layer of brass and strings climbed toward the heavens, tension mounting with every measure, until that legendary trombone solo erupted and seemed to last forever. Musicians still study that arrangement today, marveling at its complexity and emotional precision, but the arrangement was nothing without the voice. Sinatra did not just sing the lyrics, he inhabited them. You could hear the obsession in every breath, the inability to escape a love that was both salvation and destruction. This was adult music for adult emotions, sophisticated and raw at the same time. The chairman of the board understood that passion does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers, and the whisper cuts deeper than any shout. This song was his throne, and he sat upon it like the king he was.
Put your head on my shoulder.
He was 15 years old when he wrote Diana and became an overnight sensation. By 19, Paul Anka was an international star commanding stages across the world. Put Your Head on My Shoulder arrived in 1959 and immediately became the slow dance anthem for every teenager in America. It was sweet, innocent, and utterly irresistible. Picture the scene in your mind. A high school gymnasium decorated with crepe paper streamers in the school colors. A punch bowl that someone definitely spiked. Nervous boys in borrowed suits gathering courage to approach girls in poodle skirts. The fast songs were fun, but everyone waited for the slow songs. And when this one came on, the whole room changed. Couples moved together, hands trembling, hearts racing, experiencing something they would remember for the rest of their lives.
Loves again.
Paul Anka understood teenage longing better than artists twice his age. His voice was smooth and reassuring, promising that love could be simple if you just held on tight enough. For millions of Americans, this was the soundtrack to their first real romantic moment. First slow dance, first kiss, first heartbreak when summer ended and someone moved away. Those memories are carved into your soul. Some of you are smiling right now, remembering a name you have not thought about in decades. This is where the ground shifts beneath your feet. Ray Charles did something in 1954 that scholars and musicians still analyze and celebrate. He took the sacred sound of gospel music, the passionate cries heard in black churches across the American South, and he fused it with the secular energy of rhythm and blues. The result was, I Got a Woman, and popular music would never be the same again. Some church folks were outraged. They called it blasphemy. They said Ray was stealing God's music and using it for sinful purposes. But Ray Charles was blind since childhood, and maybe that helped him see what others could not. He understood that joy is joy, that passion is passion, that the Spirit moves through all music equally, whether you are praising the Lord or celebrating the woman you love. His piano playing was ferocious. His voice was an instrument of pure emotion that could shift from tender to explosive in a single phrase. Every artist who followed owes a debt to this moment. James Brown studied Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin worshipped him. Stevie Wonder considered him a father figure. The entire genre of soul music exists because Ray Charles had the courage to break the rules. He kicked open a door that everyone else walked through. I Got a Woman was not just a hit song, it was the big bang of modern black music. And the universe is still expanding. New Orleans never sounded like anywhere else in America. The city had its own rhythm, its own flavor, its own way of turning even tragedy into celebration. And Antoine Domino, known to the world as Fats, was the undisputed king of that sound. When he released Blueberry Hill in 1956, he took a song that had been recorded many times before and transformed it into something entirely his own. The song sold over 5 million copies and introduced mainstream America to New Orleans rhythm and blues. But beyond the sales figures, Fats Domino gave the world a blueprint for how rock and roll could be joyful without being aggressive. Not every revolutionary needs to burn things down. Some of them just need to make you dance until your feet hurt and your face aches from smiling. He found his thrill on Blueberry Hill, and 70 years later, that thrill still echoes through every piano-driven rock song ever recorded.
Peggy Sue, pretty.
Lubbock, Texas was cotton fields and church steeples and Friday night football. It was not supposed to produce revolutionaries, but nobody told Buddy Holly. With his thick-rimmed glasses and his skinny frame, he looked more like an accountant than a rock star. Girls did not scream for boys who looked like Buddy Holly. Except they did, because when he opened his mouth and picked up his guitar, something magical happened. Peggy Sue exploded onto the radio in 1957 with a sound nobody had ever heard. That driving rhythm, relentless and hypnotic.
Oh, Peggy, my Peggy said.
That hiccuping vocal style that seemed to break all the rules of proper singing. The song was recorded in one take, a feat that still amazes musicians who understand how difficult that is. Buddy Holly did not just perform other people's songs like most artists of his era. He wrote his own. He produced his own records. He made decisions that were supposed to be reserved for record executives. And then, on February 3rd, 1959, his plane went down in an Iowa cornfield during a snowstorm. Buddy Holly was 22 years old. Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper died with him. They call it The Day the Music Died, and the name is not an exaggeration. But Peggy Sue keeps playing on radios and in movies and at wedding receptions. Buddy Holly proved that you did not need to look like Elvis to change the world. You just needed talent, vision, and a guitar. Do you remember where you were when you first heard that opening riff? Richard Stephen Valenzuela was born in Los Angeles to a Mexican-American family that did not have much money but had plenty of music. By the time he was 17, he had shortened his name to Richie Valens and was about to change American culture forever. La Bamba was not his creation. It was a traditional Mexican folk song that had been played at weddings and quinceañeras for generations. But Richie heard something in that old melody that nobody else had noticed. He heard rock and roll. His 1958 version was fast, electric, and proudly bilingual. At a time when singing in Spanish on American radio was almost unheard of, Richie Valens belted out the lyrics with joy and confidence. For Mexican-American kids across California, Texas, Arizona, and the entire Southwest, this was a moment of profound pride. Here was one of their own, a brown kid from Pacoima, sharing the charts with Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry. He proved that rock and roll recognized no borders. 3 months after La Bamba became a hit, Richie Valens boarded a small plane in Clear Lake, Iowa. He was not supposed to be on that flight. He won his seat in a coin toss. The plane crashed minutes after takeoff. Richie Valens was 17 years old, dead before he could legally vote or buy a drink. But La Bamba refused to die with him. The song has been covered countless times and remains a staple at celebrations everywhere. Some songs are so full of life that death cannot touch them.
Only you.
The doo-wop era produced hundreds of vocal groups, young men on street corners harmonizing for anyone who would listen. But the Platters operated on a different level entirely. They were sophisticated, polished, and devastatingly romantic. When Only You hit the airwaves in 1955, it became the gold standard for love songs. Nothing else came close. The Platters were black artists performing for integrated audiences at a time when that simple act required tremendous courage. They dressed impeccably, behaved flawlessly, and broke through every barrier placed before them with grace and talent. Only You was not merely a love song. It was a statement that black voices could define romance for all of America. And when Tony Williams sang that only you could make this world seem right, nobody argued. How could they? The man was undeniable.
But what a thrill! Goodness and gracious, great balls of fire!
If rock and roll needed a certified madman, Jerry Lee Lewis showed up with a torch in each hand. They called him the Killer, and watching him perform explained the nickname immediately. Great Balls of Fire detonated in 1957 like a bomb thrown through the window of polite society. Nothing before or since has matched its manic energy. Jerry Lee did not merely play the piano. He waged war against it. He kicked the bench away mid-song. He pounded the keys so hard the instrument shook. He climbed on top of the piano while still playing. According to legend, he once set his piano on fire during a performance and kept playing as the flames rose. His blonde hair flew wild, sweat poured down his face, and his voice howled about desire so intense that it literally burned. Parents were horrified. Preachers called him demonic. Teenagers lost their minds. His personal life was scandalous, even by rock and roll standards. He married his 13-year-old cousin, a fact that temporarily destroyed his career when the British press discovered it during a tour. But Jerry Lee never apologized, never backed down, never stopped burning. He outlived almost everyone from that era, dying in 2022 at the age of 87, still ornery and unrepentant. Great Balls of Fire remains one of the most explosive recordings in music history. That fire he sang about was real. 70 years later, you can still feel the heat. Before there was anyone else, before Elvis, before the Beatles, before rock and roll had a name that white America recognized, there was Little Richard screaming into a microphone like a man possessed by joy itself. Tutti Frutti burst out of the radio in 1955 and nothing would ever be the same. That opening scream was not a greeting. It was a declaration of war. Richard Wayne Penniman was flamboyant in ways that 1950s America could not comprehend. He wore makeup, he styled his hair in a towering pompadour, he pounded the piano while standing up, his body contorting with an energy that seemed superhuman. The lyrics of Tutti Frutti were famously nonsensical, cleaned up from far more explicit original verses that no radio station would touch. But the words did not matter. The feeling mattered, and the feeling was pure, uncut, weapons-grade excitement. Little Richard was the architect of rock and roll. He gave permission to an entire generation to be loud, to be strange, to be unapologetically themselves. Without him, there is no Elvis. Without him, there is no Beatles. Without him, there is no Prince or Michael Jackson or anyone else who dared to blur the lines between masculine and feminine on stage. Tutti Frutti was the big bang of modern popular music. Can you still feel that energy when you hear those opening notes? That was the moment everything changed.
Love me tender, love me true.
The world knew Elvis as the hip-shaking threat to public morality, the sneering rebel who made teenage girls scream and fathers reach for their shotguns. But Elvis Aaron Presley was far more complicated than any single image could capture. Love Me Tender, released in 1956, revealed the tender heart beating beneath the leather jacket. This was Elvis, the romantic, Elvis the vulnerable, Elvis the son who loved his mama more than anything. Love Me Tender proved that rock and roll did not always have to rebel. Sometimes it could simply feel. Sometimes the most radical thing an artist can do is show vulnerability in a world that demands toughness.
Love me long, tell me.
Elvis understood this instinctively. He could shake the foundations of society one moment and break your heart the next. That range is what made him the king. This ballad was not a departure from rock and roll. It was an expansion of what rock and roll could contain.
Go, Johnny, go, go. Go, Johnny, go.
If rock and roll has a national anthem, this is it. Chuck Berry released Johnny Be Good in 1958, and in doing so, he wrote the instruction manual for every rock guitarist who would ever live. That opening riff is the most famous in music history. It has been played in garages and stadiums, at parties and funerals, on every continent, and probably in outer space. Everyone knows it. Everyone has tried to play it. The song told the story of a country boy who could play guitar just like ringing a bell. He was poor, uneducated, but blessed with a gift that could not be denied. The song was autobiographical in the best sense. Chuck Berry was that country boy, born in St. Louis, raised in poverty, gifted with a talent that would change the world. His duck walk across the stage became iconic. His lyrics were clever and witty in ways that rock music had not previously attempted. He wrote about cars, girls, school, and the dreams of young America. The Beatles studied him obsessively. The Rolling Stones named themselves after one of his songs. Every guitarist who has ever plugged in an electric guitar and felt that surge of power is channeling Chuck Berry, whether they know it or not. Johnny Be Good is not just a song. It is the source code for an entire genre. Chuck Berry deserved more credit during his lifetime than he received. But the music speaks for itself. It always has. And 70 years later, that opening riff still sounds like the future arriving at full speed. We end where we must end, with the king at his most dangerous. Jailhouse Rock arrived in 1957 as both a song and a film, and together they captured rock and roll at its most irresistible. The premise was absurd: prisoners throwing a party in the county jail, dancing and singing while the warden looked on. But absurdity was the point. Rock and roll did not have to make sense, it just had to move you. The song was fast, rebellious, and impossible to ignore. Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller wrote it specifically for Elvis, crafting lyrics that walked the line between playful and provocative. When Elvis performed the number in the film, his choreographed movements scandalized parents and electrified teenagers in equal measure. Television had filmed him only from the waist up during previous appearances, but in the movie, you could see everything, and everything was dangerous. Jailhouse Rock represented the moment when rock and roll and Hollywood merged into something unstoppable. Music was no longer just sound. It was image, style, attitude, and motion. Elvis did not just sing about rebellion, he embodied it. The song topped the charts for 7 weeks. The film became a cultural phenomenon. And a young kid watching in a movie theater somewhere in America decided right then that he wanted to pick up a guitar and change the world too. That kid might have become one of your favorite artists. The chain reaction continues to this day. Here is something nobody talks about. These artists had no idea what they were creating. Chuck Berry did not know he was writing the blueprint for every rock song that would follow. Elvis did not know that a truck driver from Tupelo would become the most famous face on the planet. They just played and sang. They just followed the fire inside them. And that fire jumped from the radio into your living room, your car, and your soul. 70 years from now, someone will make a video about the music of today. But we both know the truth. They will never make them like this again. Drop a comment and tell us which of these 14 songs you would play at full volume right now if nobody was watching. We read every single one. This was Rock Memories, the music that made us who we are.